One of the things I did when my children were little was I had dates with them. And when I take my daughters out, one of the things I did early on was tell them that Daddy really loved them, and that Daddy loved them so much that someday when a young man came wanting to ask them to go on a date, that Daddy was going to talk to the boys who wanted to come take them on a date. And so here they were 5 years old, 6, 7, 8. They go, oh, that's really cool, Daddy. They really thought that was cool at that point. Obviously that would begin to change. And I'll never forget the first young man who stepped out to take my daughter Ashley out on a date. His name was Kevin, and we walked outside and leaned up against his motorbike, which was a bit of a concern. We clarified that he would not be taking her out on a date on the motorbike, and I began to talk to Kevin. I told Kevin because of my work, I was aware of what took place between young people and how young men are attracted to young ladies, and you've probably noticed that my daughter's got a cute body. Now think about it for a moment. What's Kevin going to say at this point? Is he going to lie and say, no, I really haven't noticed, which at that point he and I both know he'd be lying, or is he going to admit it and then have culpability? Well, Kevin kind of nodded his head and grunted a little bit, and then I said, and because of my work, Kevin, I know that young men think about sex every 7 seconds. And I said, Kevin, you and I both know that he's lying about the other 6 seconds because he's thinking about it all the time. And I said, whether you go out with my daughter one time or whether you go out with her 50 times and she becomes your wife, I just want to look you eyeball to eyeball, Kevin, man to man, and call you as a young man to keep your hands and your lips off of my daughter's body. Because she's most likely not going to be your wife. And she's going to be somebody else's wife. And wouldn't you want someone else to treat your wife with that kind of respect? Yeah. Well, at this point, Kevin's eyes are dilating and getting pretty big. And I said, Kevin, if you'll do that, I'd like you to shake my hand. Well, he did. And then I gave him my final challenge. I said, Kevin, I want you to know that I'm going to check up with you, but I want to challenge you as a young man. If God gives you the unspeakable privilege someday of being a husband and then a daddy, and you've got a little girl who grows up, I want to challenge you, Kevin, to interview your daughter's dates. Will you do that? And he said, yes, sir, Mr. Rainey, I'll do that. Well, they went on a date, and they didn't go out 50 times. It was a short-lived date, but I had 4 daughters, and I interviewed over 24 guys. And there was a lot of sweaty palms, both in terms of the young man and mine, as I interviewed these young men. I had a dad who sent me a ball bat. And he was not a violent man. He was just kind of wanting to make a point. But he sent a ball bat with his son and a Sharpie marker. And he said, Dennis, I want you to write the questions in order that you ask these young men and the things you ask them to do as you go through the interview process. And that dad put that ball bat up in the entranceway of their home and would read those questions off the ball bat to the young man. Had a lot of fun with that. I'm not advocating any kind of violence of any kind, but I think we as dads are doorways of sorts to keep sin out and evil out of our children's lives and to be a barrier and a protection from the world and from the culture. Now, obviously, we can't do it perfectly, but there are those moments in life when a dad can stand in the doorway and he can make sure he is truly doing his duty courageously to protect his daughter. One of the greatest privileges of my life was to talk to the young men who were taking each of my daughters on a date, because God entrusted those young ladies to me for a season until I make the handoff and take their hand and place it in the hand of a young man at the wedding altar. And until that point comes, I want to be the daddy they need me to be, and dads need to protect their daughters. The question is, will you as a dad, will you do that as a dad as well?